All right. Well, welcome today to Tim's Take, and we have a couple of very special guests today from the Missouri Soybean Association and also the Missouri Soybean Merchandising Council. And we'll talk a little bit about what's the difference. But we have Brian Stovall, and he's the Director of Licensing and Market and Commercialization for them, and also Blake Barlow, who's Director of Research and Agronomy. So welcome.
Welcome.
And so what is the difference between Missouri Soybean Association and the Missouri Soybean Merchandising Council? I've heard both of those, and I get them mixed up.
We get them mixed up. No,
good.
We're okay. You're okay. I'll take the first stab. Blake can go right after me, but the best and the easiest way to look at this is the association, MSA, Missouri Soybean Association, focuses on the policy arm. That's the arm, Tim, that's really focused on working in the policy and how agriculture works. What differentiates the association from the Missouri Soybean Merchandising Council is that the council is based on the checkoff. The checkoff is a federal act and order, and that act and order states that you cannot use those funds to influence policy or legislate or actually lobby. So when you take that into consideration, the checkoff focuses on research, education, and promotion. Those are the main target areas. And then the association only focuses on that lobbying side.
All right, so the Merchandising Council wouldn't be in Washington right now.
You're right on.
But you'd be funding research.
Correct.
Or licensing a new trait.
Correct.
That's where that's going to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to summarize each organization. A different way to think about it is, since the checkoff is federally mandated, there's a lot of rules and regulation. Like Brian said, we can only use those funds for research, demand, and education, whereas on the association side, since it's membership driven and it's focusing on policy, there's a lot more freedom to do with those funds.
And so you talk about the checkoff. So what funds the Missouri Soybean Association then?
It is all on the lobbying side. So that's all based on membership funds and any type of work that they may be contracted to do on behalf of the soybean farmer in that capacity to legislate or change legislation, work with legislatures, promote legislation that advances the farmer's need in the field or in the finances or anything of that nature. That all is coming as a membership association donation.
So, and soybeans are big export. Mm-hmm. And as part of that's because you all have helped develop markets around the world. Is that Missouri Soybean Association doing that, or is that the Merchandising Council?
That's the Merchandising Council.
Is it really?
Yes.
That's that demand bucket.
That's the demand bucket. Okay, all right.
That promotional demand side. So the big operation in that world is USEC, United States Soybean Export Council. Mm-hmm. So United Soybean Board, which is the federal act and orders establishment of the national checkoff. That side, along with the qualified state soybean boards, which are the states, there's 26 of us in the country, we all fund in different ways how USEC exports soybean across the globe. And so we all give different funds and different ways of moving. And how that might look for each state is a little bit different. So USEC has people all over the globe, and that's how they use their funds, is to move those beans out of the U.S. and into the global markets.
And that market is expanding, isn't it?
It changes daily.
It changes daily. That's probably the good thing. Because here we are recording this in mid-April, and things are changing.
Things are changing daily. So,
all right.
Yes.
So I get it where we could have a director of research and agronomy because soybeans have research, and we want to do that. But Brian, why do we have you here for? What do you do?
Yeah, that's the difference.
We'll get that. We'll get to Blake here in just a minute.
Blake's the easy side. That's the science side. Well, with my background is genetics. I'm a soybean breeder, so I went to school a little bit further south from here. But
Boot Hill?
I know a little bit further south,
okay,
a little bit west of that. So I actually went to Arkansas, and I was trained as a soybean breeder. Mm-hmm. My background is then into regulatory. When I came on, it was really looking at the genetics program and how the research was being funded through the checkoff into those programs, because the agronomy and research lead was focusing on how that research was conducted and portrayed and moved out into space. I went into the deeper dive of the analytics and why the quality assurance, quality control, how the products were being moved, if we were sharing our technology that was created from checkoff research from the Merchandising Council. So that was the first iteration. The next iteration is Soylaic, and that was the launch of that product. That product and the licensing of that, the bringing in and moving that trait globally. That was my first big take into licensing and tech. But then we work into new technologies and how those new technologies move as well. So really finding those partners and bringing those partners to the table to where Mizzou can work to move that in. And then a lot of times it's the Merchandising Council that is really assisting in that movement in the marketing arm. I mean, that development of that tangible piece that someone may see, or that sponsorship to where you're getting that awareness out to someone that may want to in-license that trait to breed with, or someone may want to in-license that whole variety to actually put in the field. That role is really where I play in that space.
All right. So Solar Lake is, so everybody knows, is what?
It is the non-GM high oleic that was developed through research from the checkoff at the University of Missouri in conjunction with USDA, and then also co-sponsored in research by USB.
And why is that so important?
Because it is the only non-GM high oleic out there on the marketplace, and it was discovered right here at the University of Missouri.
And that helps a lot of our export markets, doesn't it?
Yes, we play a lot better in the export space. We see that a lot of our export partners across the globe do have regulation within their own countries, and that country sets its own tone for how they bring in product, and that can be that they want to explore why a GMO is prevalent or why a gene edit. But with Soylaic, we're a non-GM, so we can move right into those markets.
So why would we want high oleic?
That's my next question. All right, Blake.
High oleic, maybe low linolenic. What is oleic and
that's a fatty acid, right?
Yeah. So we're talking fatty acid components within the trait in the bean,
and we want more oleic.
So let's go back to how we eat and consume foods in the U.S. That goes back to saturated and unsaturated fats. We had to realize that we needed to reduce the saturated fats in our diets. We were getting a little bit unhealthy in the U.S. world.
It don't taste as good, though.
Oh, well, I know. But we can do things in moderation.
Okay.
It's the overindulgence that gets us in trouble. But that's what high oleic did. It changed the fatty acid portion to a mono unsaturated fat. When you saw that change happen, everyone saw the boxes change. Some of us, Blake, may be a little young for this, Tim, but remember when the first boxes of crackers and chips said no trans fats?
Yes, exactly.
That is when FDA and the government started moving into that sector of let's pull back the saturated fats and move into an unsaturated fat. And in that space, that's where high oleic was conceived in the mindset of breeders across the country, at the likes of private industry and in the public sector here at Mizzou. And what it did is they increased the oleic that got rid of these poly unsaturated fats and got you to a mono unsaturated fats, which has to do with double bonds. I'm not talking chemistry today, but that's the bonding of the fats inside that in that seed. That means it's a lot more easy to use and a lot more easy to digest. Also, it created a stabler oil. That more stable oil was then aligned with low linolenic, which gave you some more stability for heat and also for storage. So therefore, you've combined high oleic, low linolenic as non-GM traits into one bean, which is now Soylaic as the brand, and that was all that discovery right here at Mizzou.
So I once heard that when they first started doing no trans fats, or we wanted trans fats.
No trans fats.
No trans fats.
Yeah.
Their only choice was like olive oil or palm oil. Correct. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, there weren't many out there on the market.
And soybeans were kind of low in that naturally.
We were around 20 to 25%. Most cases, the bean in the commodity space bean is 23% oleic concentration. Mm-hmm. The high oleic beans range now anywhere from about 78 to 84% high oleic.
So at least 3 times more.
You betcha.
And that makes a big difference. And it makes a difference in cooking, too.
Correct. So it gives us a lot better cooking profiles. So that's where you see this more in a space in my world where I'm traveling and marketing this product, not only in the U.S., but globally. And Blake works on the side of breeding and making sure that stuff is still working into the programs, but marketing that to where persons realize that food is a conscious decision and it's a decision to be made, and that high oleic provides that. And so that's really where that whole transition happened, is how do we get the healthy fat to be cooked with. And thank goodness we had biodiesel during the time frame where soybean oil was seen as a saturated fat. So that gave us a little bit of a reprieve, right? A little bit of a reprieve for use of soybean oil. But what really saved us was the fact that we were able to move on into this high oleic space and move back into the use in food consumption.
So, Blake, can I have a high oleic soybean they can also use for biodiesel? Or do I have to keep those two separate?
You could use it for either one.
Okay.
But if you're using a healthier oil, you can take advantage of that in the food space.
Because I just wondered, is all of our soybeans going to eventually be high oleic? Is that just going to be a trait that we have in all of them?
We dabble in this discussion, and there are certain parts of our industry and end users that need the fatty acid composition based upon the original components. Mm-hmm. There are other aspects that do need it for high oleic because it gives them a better profile. The heat stability of this, of high oleic, and the low linolenic combination is really changing the industrial space. For instance, transformers are filled with oil, correct? The transformer that transforms the electrical current going from the line to your home, it transforms, right? That oil is cooling that coil that is transforming it, right? The reduction of power. That's full of a fossil fuel-based product.
Right.
When that transformer fails, a prime example of a cleanup needing to happen by our electrical cooperatives is that space has to be cleaned up because that is a fossil fuel-based product. What they've learned is they can move high oleic into this space, and there is no need for cleanup because it's bio-based oil. Chain bar lubricants for your chain. DeWalt has a whole set. There's also car, as well as, which is a synthetic oil because it comes from soy, but used in cars and motors. So we're not just in human consumption. We're looking at how the heat ability and the heat stability changed that component.
Wow. So that is interesting. It started out with food, but now it's also getting more commercialized.
Yes. And so the next phase now is dairy. And now we're into the dairy space.
And so for dairy, we've had that discussion ourselves. On the dairy space, is the high oleic just in the seed or is it all through the plant?
We focus right now in the seed, and that is because the availability of the carbohydrate, the protein, the oil, and what we call ash when we talk about the components of the soybean seed, but that is the other fiber products, right? That makes into the ration. So that heated bean, either through a crush or that heated bean through a roast, gives that available protein needs and then also gives a better component with the oleic that removed and switched inside the seed, gave you the high oleic. That change gave you a better profile for the gut of the use of oils inside the gut of that animal. So that's the biggest shift we've seen.
So we got to look at the animal inside, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the inside portion. It doesn't really have a lot to do with how it does on the outside and how the animal makeup. It is really how it reduces and the ability for the high oleic to reduce inflammation in the gut, in the rumen of the dairy cattle.
Now, are U.S. soybeans the only ones that have this trait?
There are a couple that have dabbled in this in other parts of the world. North of us, there was a group that was working with it in Canada. I have heard of others in Latin America. No one has found the stability that we as soyleic in that non-GM portion, as well as Plenish in its portion, as to take hold in the marketplace. The stability that the two genes, the GMO of Plenish and the non-GM of soyleic, they've been superior compared to the other traits that have been developed at this time.
So in this environment that we have right now of tariffs and retaliatory tariffs, and I'll get my soybeans from someplace else. If you want high oleic soybeans, you're going to have to come to the United States.
That is correct. Yes. Right now, the U.S. is producing the most acreage. The other side of that in high oleic is canola and sunflower, and those are produced in other places around the world. But those are other two traits that are blended in most cases for the food consumption and frying is high oleic sun, high oleic canola, and high oleic soy make up the combination that's being used in those new frying components.
But the big thing about soybeans, it's also 38% protein too.
Right.
So you have that other aspect of that.
You have a whole nother piece of that. And that's what Blake and the research he does, working with the researchers, is looking at, are there opportunities of new potential discoveries that could be used in protein? 0.1% goes a long way when we get that extracted, because then it's down to dry matter. And that a lot of people do get confused. I think Blake and I have had this other conversation, is dry matter versus everyone else listening to this podcast. We talk about 13% moisture, correct?
Right.
We talk about beans at 13%. I'm going to let everyone know, a buyer of our soybean is usually going to be talking about dry matter. Don't get confused, please, because it does skew the data, because that water removed in dry matter calculation gives an inflated value compared to what you and I, listening to this podcast and talking today, we say 13%, and that's our normal number. Mm-hmm. But in the world around us, they look at everything in a dry matter basis. So they may say, well, we talk about, our beans are at anywhere from 35 to 38% harvested right here in the state of Missouri, protein content on 13% moisture. Dry matter, that's going to be elevated at like 42 to 43%. Well, we get a buyer overseas that calls the demand side of us and says, hey, we need these beans at 42%. And you look at you flip open our seed guide over here.
None of them are there.
No, we don't look bad. It's a different calculation. Right. So that's one of those fun little spins on word choice.
So what else are you licensing in commercialization, just besides the high oleic?
Yeah, well, we do a lot more in germplasm. A lot of people don't realize that the breeding work and the research work coming out of the oversight of where Blake is working with the breeding teams and the agronomic researchers in the Mizzou system, those varieties coming into the platform as being non-GM, MySpace, I work with companies that may in-license to breed with those. What has changed a lot is that we've been able now to track that. So we now have that ROI, that the checkoff funded research in these development of new germplasms or new donor traits, and they can be incorporated into private companies. And the private companies and private industry have to report back because we have a license agreement. And that agreement then allows us to track more appropriately how the checkoff was used globally.
So if Dr. Lynn or Dr. Skaboo come up with a SCN resistant gene that's in soybeans and a private company wants it, they have to pay you all.
Yep. They have to sign a licensing agreement, and that agreement then sets up the stage. That could have a patent associated with it. It could not. If someone wanted to in-license it, we kind of have that flexibility in most cases because the licensing agreement is a binding agreement. What you do with the patent difference is that you're trying to protect something globally, so somebody doesn't make the same thing just by their experience of learning. The patent sets that stage for how that product looks to be created. But in most cases, the license agreement's usually all we have when it comes to germplasm or, let's say Dr. Lynn and Dr. Skaboo were working together and they created something that we hadn't really thought of. And that in some of those cases is a combination of tolerance from the south to the north. And that could be a combination of frog eye with a little bit of phytophthora. Let's get a little root knot and let's get some soybean cyst nematode resistance. But they've done this together. That variety could be a donor, but guess what? All those traits are known, right? They're known traits. We've already had these in the system. But what we can do is put that in the profile of all the universities and then say, also universities, we're going to talk to the private companies, and we just out-license that. We out-license that variety as the donor, and we set the whole stage for then we'll have the report back of where Missouri genetics influence the world around us.
And those dollars, they have to pay for this technology. It goes back to help research to get more. So this is an investment for Missouri soybean growers. And
it is reinvestment for Mizzou. Mizzou gets their portion of that as well.
That's great. It's kind of a win-win for everybody.
Yes, sir.
But that system goes one direction, doesn't it? Industry doesn't share much with public breeders.
You'd be shocked. We actually do a lot more in-licensing these days and looking at how we can in-license, but not just traits. It's how they use their technology. Their technology and their ability to screen and compile data at the private sector is much more multifaceted and much more speedy than we can do in a university sector because they can spend quite a bit of money per day in research, right, and development. So it's not only in licensing of herbicide traits, in licensing of disease traits, it's also the ability for us to work with them and having some of our products screened, which gets our product in their eyes and in their mindset, oh, we should in-license. It's a win-win for all of us. So yes, we do work in both ways, in licensing and out licensing with the private industry. We also do in licensing with other universities as well if they have traits or items we may want.
So Blake, what's the advantage of a public breeder then?
You read my mind. I was going to ask Brian to hit on what would a big company, why would they benefit from licensing some of our genetics? When you're a big company, you have a pool of genetics you've been using. If you can bring in new genetics, you can diversify the background and extend the life of varieties and discover new varieties.
And also with the publics, with the university system, they've got postdocs, they've got graduate students that can really bore down into some of these issues and spend that time. It may take 10 or 15 years to find this trait, and they can afford to do it where industry just doesn't want to do that.
Well, and sometimes industry depends on us to do that.
Right.
They literally are watching. We get together every February, and Blake got to attend his first one, and it's the soybean breeding workshop. I've been going off and on since 2007. No farmer wants to go to that event. I'm just going to admit, but I'm going to go ahead and let everybody know. At that moment, we circulate amongst our teams entomology, and we talk about we go from entomology to physiology. And then this last time we were really heavy into insect pressure, and as well as above ground and below ground. And that was where the SCN technologies really took hold this last time.
And that seems to be raising its head again in the SCN.
It's a $1.5 billion a year loss to the U.S. farmer, and overall from maturity group 1 to maturity group 7 in their yield cost.
And it's kind of a hidden now, because when I was a kid, it would wipe us out. Whereas now they just subtly reduce yield.
It's the hidden pest. Yeah. You don't know it's there.
Right.
Unless you sample your soil, and then you might not hit them.
Right.
So traditionally, when you test for SCN or when you go take soil samples, most people will take the sample directly in the middle of the row because that's the easiest, right?
Well, sure.
Well, those little microscopic roundworms aren't feeding in the middle of the row. You need to sample closer to the roots where they're actually feeding. And Dr. Mandy Bish did a survey this year and noticed when their team was out there sampling, numbers were significantly higher than we thought they originally were. So
because of the sampling area.
That's just one of the many ways that we know they're out there. They show their face in making the beans just look sick. So it can mimic a lot of other symptomology. So you have to do soil testing, proper soil testing.
It really came about in the 1970s when I was growing up, when SCN was really starting to come to the forefront. And the research at the University of Missouri, funded by the Missouri Soybean Association in the 70s and the 80s, really helped overcome these issues. And I've once said, I still believe it, that without for that research down at the Delta Center, we wouldn't have soybeans in the Mid-South because SCN would have wiped us out.
The amount of research and just overall what I call observation for potential tolerance in the Mid-South saved a lot of beans.
Yeah.
And that wasn't just a mindset. That was a desire of the breeders from these universities, not only Missouri, but Missouri took a huge lead in that. And that was a hardcore focus of let's put this in the worst place on that farmer's field. And we're going to put 15 varieties and we're going to see who lives.
Yeah. Well, by the late 70s, we almost were ready to quit growing soybeans on our farm in the Missouri Boot Hill.
Yep.
And Grover Shannon, a young Grover Shannon, had a new PI line called Bedford that which was known to have resistance to the races that we had, and that made a tremendous difference.
Yes, sir.
And that was used as a breeding line too, wasn't it?
Yep, it was back crossed into several varieties.
Yeah, that really saved the soybean industry.